Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using a My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. This kit was the March kit and it featured some really beautiful papers and embellishments from the Simple Stories Simple Vintage Spring Garden collection. For this layout, I'm doing something a little bit different for me. I used two different pieces of pattern paper. I have half of the layout covered with a really pretty pink pattern and then the other half covered with a beautiful blue pattern. And that's something that I've never tried before, and I thought for this layout I would give it a try. It's a much more busy background than I'm used to, but I wanted to see how it would work out. I'm using a 4x6-inch photo of my daughter Julia. I've already mounted the photo on some white cardstock, and then I wanted to make a pink mat for it. I didn't have a lot of pink pattern paper, so I decided that I was going to take some strips of it and make a little frame around the outside of this piece of white cardstock, because of course, since the photo will cover up most of it, you're only going to see the edges. So this is something that I do all the time. Sometimes it's to conserve paper, and in this case it's just because I didn't have a lot of this paper. And so that the border looks a little bit more polished and not like I just attached some pieces of paper together, I'm going to fold the corners as if it was a frame. So I fold the corner down to make a 45-degree angle, and then I use my scissors and I cut along the fold line. And then I fold the paper over so I don't have to do that again. I could just use the angle that I've already measured. And now my work is done, and I can use that first strip of paper as a template for the second strip of paper. And it really doesn't have to be perfect because just a really small amount of the pink border is going to show and just a little bit of the angles that I'm making. But I want it to look as good as possible. But like I said, it really doesn't have to be. Before I attach these strips of pattern paper down to the white cardstock, I ink all of the edges that are going to show with some Distress Oxide in the color Barn Door. And that color turned out to be a really pretty shade of reddish pink that I think went really well with this collection. And then I inked all around the outside of the mat as well. And now I'm going to just use some ATG adhesive and attach my photo down to the mat. And this definitely takes a little bit of extra time to create a mat like this, but I think that it's good to know that it's possible if you should be running low on a certain paper that you really want to use as a border or a mat. It's just something to have in your bag of tricks. So I wanted to put some kind of a border in between those two pieces of paper where they meet in the center of the layout. And the photo is going to go in the center, but I wanted to have a little something going along that line above and below it. I'm going to use these strips of numbers. I will start making that border in a little while. Right now I am inking the edges of some photo corners that I've punched out of some green paper. So I also ink the edges with some green Distress Oxide, and the name of the color is Bundled Sage. I took out a whole bunch of different shades of green, but that's the one that I went with. Now I have my photo in the center of the page. I have those strips of numbers on the top and the bottom, and I felt that that strip should be a little bit wider, so I'm going to add some punched out borders to either side. I have this Martha Stewart punch, and I thought this would be a pretty, almost like kind of a lacy border. In addition to this strip of paper being really pretty, it also is nice because I can mount the numbers to the strip, and then I just have one element to move around instead of having the strip on the bottom and the top separate. This way I know that everything is lined up and attached together, and it just makes it a little easier than trying to work with smaller pieces of paper. And then I punch out another border strip, and then I'm going to attach that on the right-hand side. So a lot of times on my layouts, I will combine off-white and bright white. You can see on this layout, I have some off-white in the background of the pattern paper on the right, and then I'm using some brighter white for the strips of paper that I just punched out. And some people don't mind combining those, and some people like to only have one of those on their layouts. And I do a little of both. Sometimes I'll only use one of them, and sometimes I'll combine them. And in this case, I felt that the two of them looked good together. So I think that it varies depending on your taste and depending on the layout that you're making. I often like to give my photos a little bit of dimension. I usually use fun foam, but today I used some chipboard pieces. These were the fronts of boxes of K and Company chipboard letters. I had a whole bunch of them, and I decided that they would take up less space if I put them together into little plastic containers rather than keeping them in the original boxes. So I saved all the fronts of the boxes so that I could do just this and use them to pop up some of the elements on my pages. Now it's time to start adding the embellishments to the page. On this particular layout, the background is very busy. I am not used to having such a busy background with all of these different pattern papers. So I want to make sure that the embellishments don't get lost or kind of blend into the background. I want to make sure that you can still kind of visually read what's going on. So one of the things that I did to try to accomplish that was to leave the white border on the edges of the die cut pieces. I usually cut that off, not always, but often I will cut it off. And in this case, I think that that white border comes in really handy to provide that separation between that busy background and the embellishments. I have 3 different clusters that have flowers in them, and then I also have the title cluster. And I am going to be using butterflies a little bit differently than I usually use them. I will usually scatter them across the page, but I thought that for this layout it might look nice to have 3 butterflies layered on top of each other right above the title. I wanted to give some dimension to the title. This is a sticker from the sticker sheet in the kit. I use fun foam to pop that up, and then I also am using the fun foam to pop up the wings of the butterflies. This photo is of my daughter Julia. One weekend we were in Brooklyn, and my older daughter had wanted to go there because there's a pizza place there called Screamer's Pizza, and she saw it advertised on Instagram so many times, and she was just dying to try their pizza. So we took a family trip together to Brooklyn one day. And we went to the pizza place, and the pizza was absolutely delicious. There were a lot of varieties. And then we also brought home a bunch of slices, which I was really happy about. Even though it doesn't taste exactly the same as when you first get it in the pizza place, they were still really good when we had them at home too. And that day we also got to go to Prospect Park. I have been wanting to visit Prospect Park for decades. When I was a kid, I used to read these books about magic by an author named Ruth Chu, and she was from Brooklyn, so she used to always mention Prospect Park in her books, and I just really wanted to see what it was like. And so the first time that we went to Brooklyn, more recently, it was just way too hot, and none of us really wanted to walk around. We were really looking to just get into some air conditioning. So this time we went, it was a little bit cooler, and so we took a stroll over to Prospect Park. It wasn't far at all from where we were having lunch, and it was so nice to be able to see it, and there were a lot of people there enjoying the nice weather, and I was just really happy to finally get to see this place that I had read so much about when I was a kid. And it's funny that we never went there before. I really don't live that far from Brooklyn, but I guess I wouldn't make a trip there just to see Prospect Park, but I'm glad we went while we were nearby. After I added the foam to the butterfly wings, I went around to all the clusters on the page and I attached all the die cut pieces down. And I ended up moving those butterflies around a little bit. I pushed them down and layered them a little bit more so they would look like one unit. I've noticed that different manufacturers have different signature embellishments. Simple Stories will often include hearts in the shape that you see here in their sticker sheets. I think they're great little embellishments to include around the page. Sometimes you might want to add a certain color to an area, or just something a little bit smaller where there are a lot of larger embellishments. So I include a number of those hearts on this layout, although you'll find that they kind of migrate around the page a little bit because I keep changing my mind as to where I want to put them. I ended up moving all 3 of those small blue hearts around the title, and then I layered some hearts together, and right now they're at the bottom of the photo, but I end up adding a couple more and putting them at the top. I love adding highlights to the dimensional flowers with some heavy white gesso. I think you could really see here how those blue flowers just come alive when there's a little bit of white added to the ends of the petals. And then I also wanted to make the flowers a little bit more sparkly, so I'm using some Opal glitter medium. This is Master's Choice brand, and I add that to all of the flowers. The white highlights, I just added those to the blue flowers and the pink flowers because of course you won't see the white on the white flowers, but the Opal glitter medium not only goes on the flowers, but I also added to the 3 butterflies. And I really like using glitter pastes like this. I think that it adds a really nice element to your pages, and it only takes a few moments and it dries pretty quickly too. And I add the Opal glitter medium twice. I like to have 2 coats on all of my items. Now I'm adding some sparkles to the centers of the butterflies. I'm using some very small rhinestones that I had in my stash, and my scissors are helping me to place all of those tiny rhinestones in the right places on the butterflies. The medium-sized pearls I can usually manipulate and place them on with my fingers, but these really tiny ones are a little bit harder for me, so I always try to use scissors or sometimes tweezers. And then I'm also adding some of the jewels to the flowers just to add a little bit more sparkle to them. But I didn't overdo it. I added the very small rhinestones and I only added 1 or 2 to each of the flowers. But then I had to add more embellishments. I had just purchased these Dress My Craft pearls. I thought they were so pretty. They are called Snowy, and they're iridescent. There's touches of pink and blue in them, and I thought that they would be perfect for this page since there's so much pink and blue. And I added mainly 1 or 2 pearls. The large white flower has 3 pearls on it to each of the flowers. And there are at least 3 different sizes of pearls, so I varied the sizes on each of the flowers. And I use glossy accents to attach them down. And I was kind of going back and forth on whether or not I should buy these pearls because I have a lot of pearls in my stash. I do tend to collect them, but when I received them, I was thinking how they're really different and gorgeous in person. They truly are iridescent, and each one of them is both pink and blue. And they did coordinate really nicely with this collection. They were a little pricey. You don't get too many of them, but they're really pretty, so I think that they're worth it. And here you have a little guest appearance from my friend Rory. She's my little 40-pound Australian Shepherd mix, and she is such a good friend. She is always right next to me. She's very protective. She's just a really sweet girl, and she's often checking out what I'm doing, and when I'm scrapbooking, that's no different from anything else that I'm doing, so she had to kind of see what was happening. Well, I don't think I included the footage of me gluing down those dimensional flowers. For some reason, I used gel glue on this layout. I usually use heavy gel medium, but the gel glue ended up working out fine, so maybe I can use that more often in the future. And then I also added a couple more tiny flowers to each of the clusters just to add a little bit of pink and a little bit of blue into some places that didn't have them. I inked the edges of a pink heart. I layered it on top of a purple heart, and then I placed that to the right-hand side of that layered heart that I already had on the layout. And then I added some jewels to the centers of those hearts. And then I went back with my Opal glitter medium and I added it to the flowers that I just added, just so that all the flowers on the layout would be coated with it. As I was working with my jewels, I noticed that I had this kind of stray large blue jewel, and I thought it would look really nice in the center of the large blue flower, so I added that to the center of it. And now that the gel medium is dry, I went back to each of those flowers that I added in the second round, and I added a few dabs of the white gesso to those flowers too. And as a last touch, I added some fussy cut bees to the flowers. And this layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you have been watching my channel recently, I hope that you've been enjoying all of these My Creative Scrapbook videos that I've been catching up with from past months. I've really been enjoying making them. I thought that I would be done with all of my editing and voicing over by this time in the summer, but I still have a few to go, so those will be going up on my channel soon. In the description box, you'll find the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website where you can get all the information you need to order a subscription to the limited edition kit or any of their beautiful kits. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.